Hey guys, it's Matt. Before I read Chapter 5 of A Reality Few Can See, a few quick notes. Per the last video, I think it was Sielinski channel, made a good comment about Jurassic Park. No matter what you believe dinosaurs to be, that's not the point of this video. It had completely real-looking dinosaurs. In '93, I would have figured it was '98. But it was like 93. It's that old. And they really haven't improved since 93. So, come on. I mean, these things are being held back for sure. And I didn't know about the video games, the video game technology and graphics being held back as well, or at least not progressing. But we have our theories as to why it's not progressing, and we're all kind of on the same page. I played a lot of video games between 1998 and 2002, and then I stopped. But apparently, after 2008 to 2010, there haven't really been any great advancements. Couple quick things. The following part of A Reality Few Can See is for the Quantum of Conscience YouTube channel only, please. This book is not printed. And I wanted to make a comment about that. I haven't talked about that. I have said it is not printed. But there's two things going on. One is I feel absolutely confident with the information. Okay, and if I had 10 grand, I would print it up and start doing the hard copy. But so I'm confident in the information I'm delivering. But that being said, we never get it right and we just pack our bags and go home. This is a journey for our entire lives. We'll always readjust our positions and our viewpoints. So that being said, I'm not just throwing out a rough draft. I've been believing all of this. I've been over this in my mind for 10 years and in the proofing of this book itself over the last year and a half. But if I'm totally getting something wrong in a chapter, guys, let me know. Let me have it. Because I'm reading it from the draft laptop, backing up to various, not PDFs, various thumb drives, which I keep in various locations. But I'm open to change on this, guy. So if I'm getting something wrong, please let me know. And that's also a good thing that's not printed yet, because we've evolved our viewpoints so much over the last 2.5 years that I can only think that if I start printing this a year from now, I'll be happy I waited, because I probably will have changed my position on a few things or the way I see things. It's just been a tremendous roller coaster ride since Trump got in. I don't know how that, the only thing I can remember about how that lines up with completely changing my viewpoints on almost everything is going into the, quote, election. I said, really, no matter what happens, no matter who, quote, wins, reality will be revealed. I said that so many times in the old Texas Shrug book channel. Reality will be revealed. Either way. It can't hide any longer. And you know what? I was exactly right about that. Now, going into the, quote, election, I was skeptical of almost everything. But I was very honest with people that going into the middle part of 2016, I said, I still hold out a 3% chance that Trump could get in and could actually do things to improve our situation or restore the Bill of Rights. And people would email me, not as much email, but they would leave comments under those videos saying, hey, I like the channel, Matt. You break down all the fake events. But come on, wise up. These elections aren't real. Holding out any hope is just useless, pointless. And I would be honest and reply back. And I'd say, look, I hear you. But at this point, I hold out a tiny bit of hope. I wanted to believe. And of course, if Hillary, quote, was elected, well, we'd know instantly the whole thing was rigged. So, we knew it was rigged all along, but I honestly was holding out some degree of hope. And the good commenters really let me have it. And you know what? They were right. I was totally wrong. The way I see it now is so much different than even the way I saw it in the middle to early part of 2016. Right now, there's just no chance in my mind a presidential election is real. Everything has broken down for me. okay, let me put it this way. Whatever hadn't already broken down, whatever the 5 eggs left that weren't cracked, they cracked since the election. I mean, obviously, I saw the the fake events. Before that, I'd been breaking down the fake events, 9/11, all that stuff. I had been doing that on the old Texas Shrugged channel. But in terms of just how completely scripted politics is, it's just actors. I really was holding out hope that it wasn't as bad as it turned out to be. Last thing before I read Chapter 5. Guys, I didn't watch, and this is old news, but it's something that hit me recently. I didn't watch the Kavanaugh hearings. Was it Brett Kavanaugh? And I just wasn't watching any news at the time, and I watch almost none now. I see more now because I tune in for weather in the winter, more than I tune in for weather any other time of the year. So I see more news around the weather. And even like major weather events, I'll watch the world news for the weather event, and then the fake politics comes on, and sometimes I'll keep watching. But I didn't see any of these Brett Kavanaugh and his accuser, apparently, Chris Ford. But I have come across the Trans Apocalypse channel and some things. And look, I don't know anything about it. I didn't watch it. But the little time I've spent on it in the last week or so, just going back and seeing that unbelievable circus sideshow where it does appear like it's like Kavanaugh himself testifying as Christine Ford. Then he goes away, pulls all the makeup off, and then he testifies as Brett Kavanaugh. Now, if I have to put a bet down, and there are real stakes on the bet, would I bet if I had to pick one way or another, it was actually Brett Kavanaugh as Christine Ford? I mean, no. Okay, right now I'm not ready to put that bet down. But whatever that thing was, it's not. I agree with the transpocalypse people. That doesn't look like a woman to me. It doesn't. There's nothing about it that looks like a woman. So there's all sorts of theories that it was Kavanaugh himself, that Kavanaugh is a twin, or they made somebody look just like Kavanaugh, or was Dana Carvey made up to look like Kavanaugh. But all the theories are, it wasn't just this woman who was molested, this innocent woman, Christine Ford. It's a man and drag it. All those are on the table because I'm telling you, it is so bizarre. This thing, I mean, if you can read the Matrix Code, you're like, what is that thing? That can't be a woman. So, guys, that's not the point here. The point is, we don't know exactly what happened with these Kavanaugh hearings with whatever testified against him, this Chris Ford, but here's the point, and it's very long-winded, and I should have gotten to it a few minutes ago. If there's any reason, let me back up. We think the world is bizarre at this point, certifiably bizarre to the nth degree in every area. But if they actually, the powers that be, call it what you want, if they actually got a man or Kavanaugh himself, whatever, it doesn't matter. If it was anything other than a woman who was actually trying to say or was molested by this Brett Kavanaugh, or is just lying, but it's a woman saying she was molested. If it was a man or something that the system made up, it's some humiliation ritual, or Kavanaugh himself. If anything like that happened, do you realize how absolutely bizarre, gone, Looney Tunes this reality is? It just kind of hit me while I was watching some of those videos. Again, I came across the transpocalypse. No, I don't think every beautiful woman on TV is a tranny like these channels do. I don't. Like I said, I'll take my chances with a woman that played Wonder Woman and was in Fast 5 or 6 or whatever. I'll take my chances with a few of them, in discovering a ding-a-ling. I'll take my chances. So I don't believe everything that walks around Hollywood is a transgender like these channels do. I don't want to war with these channels. These channels probably are right about a lot of their transgender spottings, and I probably would have missed it. So maybe we meet in the middle, but I'm not there, that everything's a tranny like these channels put forth. But I did come across some of it, and I was watching these Kavanaugh hearings, and it just kind of hit me. And what does this have to do with Chapter 5? Absolutely nothing. But it just kind of hit me. If they did make up a man to do whatever, I don't know what their goal would have been. I just haven't thought it through. But if this is a man, I just watch, and I just want to express this to you, and I don't know if I'm doing it properly. if anybody's made up, and that's not a woman who really believes she was harmed by this Brett Kavanaugh, our reality is not, it's 1,000 times more gone Looney Tunes than we believed it even was a month ago or a year ago. It is literally Twilight Zone on steroids if Christine Ford was a man made up. And I just wanted to express that. I hope I did. Chapter 5. Earlier, we looked at reality by combining the movies The Matrix with The Truman Show. Regarding understanding consciousness, we should combine the movie The Matrix with the movie Avatar. Remember the disabled former Marine in the movie Avatar, Jake Sully? He's actually laying inside a pod somewhere, but his consciousness has been projected inside the body of the big blue character, whatever that species was. In the movie, we see that the consciousness of the blue character is, quote, coming from somewhere else. That's actually the best analogy, in my opinion, for what's likely the relationship between your consciousness and your disposable avatar body and its receiving dish, the brain. It certainly feels like consciousness comes from a place in your head, which seems to be like a few inches behind your eyes, and I think consciousness feels like it's kind of between my ears. However, the spark of life as a human being, which is consciousness, probably doesn't stem from your human mushy brain, probably doesn't come from the brain at all. It may come from somewhere else, as weird as that sounds. Reality is designed so consciousness feels like it's between your ears, because in this realm, playing the video game as first person rather than third person is a better experience. We also dream in first person. To really learn something, we need to be fooled that we're actually here and really here, don't we? It wouldn't work too well if consciousness was like hovering over the body and it felt like a video game. It only works if it's smack in the middle of your avatar and you really believe you're here. Is that why we're here, having this earthly experience? Is it a test? A learning experience? Well, that's only the biggest question ever asked, isn't it? So I'll come back to it later. I can safely guarantee you, though, we are not here now to collect sports cars and brag about sex acts in locker rooms. Many people will never prescribe to the reality illusion idea, no matter how strong the evidence that's presented. That's fine. Most pages here discuss the impossible coincidence and synchronicity which is life in this realm. It's an almost endless list of strange occurrences. These are used to help validate that the script laid out and running here is not of normal men. Normal people can't pull all of this off, and they can't get it right over and over again as they generally have. They can't pull it off, all that's going on here. No, it's beyond normal men. Almost every possible conspiracy is discussed, and the bizarre facts yet to come stand on their own, no matter how, quote, real you think this world is. Modern life is a script delivered by puppet masters. This is not a theory any longer. It's just a matter of recognizing it, people pulling their head out of their ass. Has it always been this way? Perhaps. We don't know. What we ponder is how they're doing it. Just a few moments ago, I said the reality play running here is beyond what normal men and women can do. To me, this is assured. To me, there's no possible way the buffoons who parade themselves before us on television as our leaders could be pulling all of this off so successfully. What are they pulling off? You'll soon see. It's beyond what most people can imagine now if you're a newbie. I haven't seen it, but that horrible movie that's out now about Dick Cheney, it looks horrible. I haven't seen it, but I'm sure it portrays Dick Cheney as the man in charge of the Bush presidency. And I'm sure it portrays George Bush as a moron. They were the roles of the script that each followed. Now, the point is, if you think that Dick Cheney was in charge, even beyond the president, then people won't think to look for who's really in charge. The entire purpose of the movie likely is to make sure people don't consider that Dick himself reported to someone or something else in the back room. Since the time of Gone with the Wind, movies are used to cement the reality and history that they want. The Daniel Day-Lewis movie, Lincoln, will literally cement history for millions of Americans, no matter what parts are true and what parts are entirely made up. Of course, Movies that are out to influence or warp history have 5-star reviews from all the Siskel and Egbert assholes. So even though we sit in the theater bored, we've already been convinced that what's on screen is excellent, and the problem must lie with us. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 96, so there must be something wrong with me if I don't like it. I was fooled enough to actually go to the theater in 2012 to see Lincoln. It totally sucked, other than the fact that Daniel Day-Lewis did a great job portraying Lincoln. If you just said out loud to yourself, how the fuck would Matt know what Lincoln was like? How do you know he did a good job portraying Lincoln? If you said that, give yourself a gold star. That's exactly right. He portrayed Lincoln so well because he portrayed probably the false image that they've put into all of our heads as to what Lincoln really was. So he was probably portraying a fiction. Anyway, I wanted to walk out of the movie. It was so bad, Lincoln. But back then, 2012, I almost felt it was my duty to sit there and understand real history. It was probably all made up. Well, not all of it. But you know what I mean. It's portrayed as absolute history when it's likely not. The first part of this book is an argument to open your mind to possibilities that are considered insane by the people around you and insane by the mainstream. Mostly that almost everything you take for granted about how the world works is not true. The last section of this book is what to do after such a shocking revelation actually sinks in. As I mentioned in the last section, the main reason many will never be able to accept what is being put forth in books like this is because the impact of realizing that your entire life up till now is a lie or has been a lie is too mentally taxing for most people to take. Most people run away from the truth of this world. And although I say that now figuratively, I have also literally witnessed people almost run away. I have witnessed people turn and walk pretty darn fast away from me. They want no part of this information. They've been programmed to have no part of this information. I've had people turn and leave the room with alacrity before I was allowed to finish a sentence. It's actually fascinating to witness such behavior. Sigmund Freud talked about the id, the ego, and the superego mind like they were three separate entities, and this is more true than people realize. There are multiple aspects of what you call you, and sometimes they don't always get along with each other. The, quote, thinking brain is only one aspect of you. If people who, quote, leave the room in the presence of scary truth could be interviewed by a reporter waiting for them around the corner, say interviewed by Doug Llewellyn from the People's Court, they would all say the same thing. You would hear nonsense like this. People that say walk away when I'm trying to tell them about 9/11, for example. You'd hear this kind of malarkey. I refuse to listen to such absurd nonsense any longer. However, they'd all be lying to themselves, and they wouldn't even realize it. What's really going on is obvious. When this same person hears a terrible joke, does that also make them turn and run away? Does a bad knock-knock joke get them angry and upset at the person, spewing forth attacks on the person telling the joke? No, but that's what they do to us when we try to wake them up to certain things, isn't it? When a crazy conspiracy theorist like me attempts to deliver shocking information to somebody, well, what happens is something inside the person that I'm talking with senses that the information is actually, in fact, true. The subconscious senses it. Then the person's subconscious wants no part of this worldview-destroying information, the worldview-destroying realization that's being presented by someone like you and me. And the subconscious takes action. So the information is no longer comprehended or can't be heard, or the subconscious convinces the thinking part of the brain that this is nonsense and I'm not listening to this any longer. I'm also saying the person is not consciously aware of what's happening, and the war raging is in their own mind. It's actually the far more powerful subconscious that's in control of what you call you. It's the subconscious in the depths of the consciousness that's realizing this new scary information being absorbed is likely true, and because it shatters the foundation of what he or she believes the world to be, the ego, or thinking part of the brain, is sent a message from the subconscious that says, get the hell out of there to protect your worldview before it's too late. The ego is also part of the mind that interprets the environment and obeys societal norms. So turning and walking away is preferred politeness over cupping the ears and screaming aloud to block the words. Yes, I'm saying that the person who walks out on truth is not even consciously aware of why they're doing it. The ego or thinking part of the brain is the last to know. We should not get upset at these people who won't listen to us or turn and walk away, because for the most part, it's not their fault. Quote, running away from this information is actually done for survival. Let me say that again. Running away from this scary information is actually done for survival. It's an appropriate instinct in this warped society. Hear me out. Once you know this information and officially become a conspiracy theorist as labeled, if you ever tell others in your clan about it, you are an instant outcast, and that's putting it mildly, like I mentioned in the last section. Survival in this realm is the rat race, and being a proponent of this information doesn't lead to more Porsches, hamburgers, or sex acts. In a previous era, having taboo knowledge of this kind and talking about it openly was likely a death sentence. You've heard of the Salem witch trials, right? You've heard of the Inquisition, right? In the past, when people said, screw you to the mainstream teachings, at least regarding organized religion, the church killed you. Perhaps the word witch was once an old synonym for conspiracy theorist. The main point here is this. The, quote, thinking part of the brain is deluded to believe that it's 100% in control. It's not in control. Freud's theory on three separate entities is likely very real. What do you do when everything you know about the world goes up in a Cheech and Chong blunt? Think of the shock Dorothy felt when Toto revealed to her that her last hope to get home to Kansas was just an old man pulling levers. Think about this. Was the anathema of today's society, the old white man, actually foreshadowed in 1936? Think about what they portrayed the old white man as doing. He fucked over Dorothy and the other three poor devils in 1936, and the old white man has kept on screwing the world through today. As one of them, I'm now a super outcast on a job application. The White Devil of Oz went on to give a Tin Man a fake heart. He went on to give a scarecrow a worthless piece of paper, and he gave the lion a medal without resolving his emotional state of cowardice. Karate lessons was what the lion needed to gain some confidence, not a medal. What the hell's a medal going to do for him when the flying monkeys come back? Then the lying, fraudulent white wizard screws them all one final time by taking off in his balloon without Dorothy. He left them all behind. Now look at the Lord of the Rings. The beloved Wizard of Color, Gandalf the Grey in the first movie that everybody loves, every hobbit just falls over in love with, becomes a bizarre figure lacking all personality when he turns into the White Wizard in the second movie. Gray turned to white and it was just an abomination. And guess what the evil Saruman's color was? You got it, Saruman the White. I now begin all job applications with this sentence. Dear hiring manager, I admit to you I'm an older white man, but I beg of you to see past it. On a serious note regarding the Wizard of Oz, Toto pulling back that curtain is the best analogy ever put forth representing how those in power project their power using government. Today, the people of your kingdom also bow down to the projection of a fake wizard, but the big bald head with fire in today's modern society is called the federal government. Trust me, Oz has nothing on it. Why do you think the government is approaching $4 disgusting $1 trillion a year in spending? That's a whore of a different color. The author hopes the reader has an open mind. You're going to need it. Let's start with this. Why would Woodrow Wilson, the 28th President of the United States, say something as bizarre as this? Quote, "Since I entered politics, I have chiefly had men's views confided to me privately. Some of the biggest men in the United States in the fields of commerce and manufacturing are afraid of something. They know that there is a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive, that they better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it." End quote. From the monster, Woodrow Wilson. Sometimes you don't need mountains of evidence to demonstrate something very strange is going on in the world. Sometimes you just need a few sentences spoken by one man. If you believe this quote is real, and there seems to be independent references confirming that Woodrow Wilson actually said this, then things in the world are not as they seem. Period. End of discussion. They can't be if this quote is real. The last sentence is particularly disturbing because the only reason one speaks to complain in a whisper is because of what the person fears will happen if they were to be overheard by the entity they're complaining about. Please read the quote again now. It's very important you understand the magnitude of what Wilson said. Well, you're listening, so I will just highlight this part. Know there's a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive, so blah, blah, blah. They better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it. So the President of the United States, who's supposed to be on top, is talking about this power somewhere. Then you better keep your mouth shut when you complain about it. But people think the world is just as it seems. The world is just as Anderson Cooper tells us it is. Whatever power exists that runs this world, Wilson's last line is an explicit threat on their behalf. Can one stand up and shout, quote, conspiracy theorist at me if the President of the United States believes there is a controlling power that runs things from the shadows? This is the scariest presidential quote ever documented. Who or what exactly was Wilson referring to? It seems obvious he was referring to exactly the same group that I call, and we crazies call, quote, the controllers, or the puppet masters. People will believe Wilson's quote and at the same time call me a lunatic. It makes no sense. If you research the quote now and a website gives you the answer as to what Wilson meant, well, don't believe it. Isn't it wonderful today we have websites like Quora and Snopes and Yahoo Answers and Wikipedia and Google to serve up reality for us so we don't have to think for ourselves any longer? Why have we been conditioned by Pavlov to run to Google for everything anyway? Beep, beep. Okay, Google, should I scratch my ass now or not? Beep, beep. Just read Wilson's quote again and think for yourself for a change. You don't need Wikipedia to interpret everything for you. Who wrote the Wikipedia article? Why is that fool's view any more valid than your own? We've been taught to bow down to the official story, vomited up by a name brand website. So why would, I'm just kind of interjecting here. Somebody's going to go research what Wilson was referring to. Just read the words. Why do you need someone to interpret? You can't speak English? No, I know I'm not talking to you guys, the old guard, but you know what I mean. You just have to read what the quote is. You don't need someone to interpret it unless you don't speak English. It's just unbelievable. Okay, for now, for a moment, assume Woodrow Wilson was right. Just make that assumption if you don't believe the way that quote is presented to us. If this world does have something like an all-powerful entity which he describes, do you think it would have any influence on information and the few websites that deliver news and history to us? Do you think that all-powerful entity that Woodrow Wilson alluded to, do you think it may control maybe the 6 corporations that deliver 95% of the news today? 100 years ago, it took over 200 companies to deliver that same slice of the news pie. As strange as the claims that I'm making, it's only thus because these topics are foreign to you, if you're a newbie listener. These are things you never learned in school and never thought about. You haven't even conditioned your brain to even give these things a second thought. You don't know how to consider these things in your brain if you're a newbie. They're so new and bizarre. Today's, quote, news and what they tell you is going on is nonsensical to anyone who thinks for themselves. To move forward, you're going to have to take Yoda's advice. You must completely unlearn what you have learned on this realm basically from birth. I'm not just saying this to be cute, to use that overused Yoda quote over and over again. I mean it literally. You must throw out everything. Throw everything out the window you learned in life after don't touch anything that glows red, which you learned probably at a year old. There's a reason you haven't heard the topics in this book discussed in the mainstream or in schools or on the, quote, news. What is news? Information that came from the North, East, West, and South, NEWS? Or perhaps what is new in the world became news. Everything here will be in complete opposition to what the so-called experts preached your entire life. Every ounce of structured energy in the West has not only bred you to reject what I'm about to tell you, it has conditioned you to ridicule me for even saying it. In another era, you would have wanted to join the crowd that stones me. By the book's end, if you don't think this is likely some sort of a matrix, you will at least agree that our society is crafted by something on high, just as President Wilson suggested. In other words, many things that you think are naturally occurring or just spring up organically are completely scripted. This means we have puppet masters on Mount Olympus, the likes of which you've never considered. I can't show them to you. I can't take you into the back rooms and show them spanking George Bush over their knee, but still the control of societal's puppet masters will be demonstrated in this book because there's no other explanation. It's so easy to see if you want to see it, though. The reason most people can't see it is they don't want to. Finally, do I think President Wilson is some sort of hero for saying this, at least publicly enough to be quoted? That Wilson was out to leak a little information to us just to help us out? Of course not. President Wilson was an absolute monster, like all of them probably are and were. He was a demon instrumental in World War I and in the process that started raising the personal income tax to about 90%. Oh, FDR took over his work and completed that Death Star for him. Wilson may have leaked something, okay, in that quote. He may have leaked something, not because he's on our side, but because these monsters, for some reason, have to leak the truth of this world to anyone who doesn't have their head up their ass.